right, hello and welcome to another Saturday sermon here at Fifth Element Free Church. We are so glad to have you join us here and on the replay. So today I am excited to introduce the minister of Muddy Boots Ministry, Angela Alexander. And Angela's program ministers mostly to children by giving them experiences in nature where they can connect to themselves and others and the world around them. And I personally have been able to get to know Angela over the last few months, and I can say that she has a gift for connecting with kids and providing them the framework so that they can have meaningful experiences. Today, however, she's going to be discussing a topic that is a little bit, can be applied to any age on the spectrum, and it's the concept of self-sufficiency. So I know that she is going to give us some tools that we can utilize in our own lives to increase our resiliency, which I think is important to most of us. So I will take it away, Angela.
Muddy Boots is a nature program, and I help them connect to the environment around them. And here they learn how to grow food, take care of farm animals, forage, identify plants. We practice mindfulness and we play. Nowadays, with electronics and video games right at their fingertips, kids miss out on such an important part of childhood. So my job is to show them how everything works. And one of the main things we focus on is how to find our own food. And I think this is super important for adults as well. So in the process of teaching them, I'm also learning so much more because, there's never ending how much you could learn about outside nature. So it's not just going to the grocery store to get our ingredients, but to be a part of the whole process of bringing the food to the table. Every day, the kids will prep their own meals from stuff we've grown ourselves or simple basic ingredients that I've purchased. My goal for next year is to only use products and food that we've grown and not have any connection whatsoever to the grocery stores. And I want the kids to be through the whole entire process. But this year I wasn't ready. My garden wasn't big enough, and well, hopefully next year. So I worry that the art and skill of foraging, hunting, growing, and preparing, cooking, and preserving our own food is becoming a lost skill. It's so easy to just buy something already prepped and ready to pop in the oven or the microwave while we sit on the couch and wait or do another task because we're so busy. A generation ago, all of our food came from either the farm or a local source, and children helped feed, care for the animals, water, and they were with it every step of the way from birth to butcher. And they helped with the planting and the growing of gardens. And we haven't evolved that far from these roots. We've just lost touch with them. And I want to make sure that these children have a chance to keep these skills alive because they're super important. So the desire for convenience and things that make our lives easier can lead to so many unhealthy habits. And I think that's a big problem with society today. These things are supposed to help free us so that we have more time. And they have now become counterproductive. We have become complacent, unhealthy, and unfulfilled. Some examples of the downside of modern conveniences are they're bad for our health. There's microwavable popcorn, coffee pods, microplastics. I mean, we could list a whole bunch of toxins that's in everything that we use. It has a negative impact on the environment, like single-use plastics and fast fashion. There's also a loss of meaning. Convenience can make things less meaningful. If you remove the challenges and the irritations, which give life meaning and build character, or just focusing on the end result instead of the process it takes to get there. One year, my boy's father, he wanted to buy a brand new like leaf blower and weed whacker. And I remember just being like, why do we need those things? Like, we have 1 acre. We have 2 hands and there's 2 of us, like we can just rake it all. But he's like, but we can get it done in half the time. And I'm like, well, I understand, especially since he worked all day. He was a carpenter, so the physical work was exhausting, and he was like, I just want to get this done. And since I'm stubborn and set in my ways, I was like, whatever, but physical work is rewarding. Raking is better for the environment. than a gas powered leaf blower. It's quieter, and when you're leaf blowing, you can't hear the birds or enjoy the sounds of the leaves. And the cost of raking was less expensive. So I caved in and we ended up buying the leaf blower. And but I was like, I'm gonna still take my rake out. So I take the rake out while he's leaf blowing, and I ended up just giving up because it was loud. And I mean, he was whipping through the lawn, and I'm like, this is pointless. So I still look at the leaf blower and I give it evil eyes, but we had it and it worked. But still, it was the whole hard work that was important to me. So we're constantly bombarded with advertisements, what to fear, what to think, what to buy, and how to fix all of our problems with these quick fixes. And that can lead to anxiety, depression, fear, and consuming things that we don't need. What we do need to do is we need to quiet our minds, and by taking small steps or giant leaps to live a more simpler, self-sustainable life, you can make room for a much healthier you, and you can build more resilience. When we engage in convenience all day, every day, it breeds dependence. Um, I remember when I worked at a restaurant and we literally, you just depend on your computer to do everything. You type everything in and then it's like, it's done for you. And then one day the computer went down and it was like hectic. Everybody was losing their minds, like we're like, how do we type in the food? Like, how do we write up a credit card slip? What's tax? And there was this one lady there that had, she was so used to, she was an older lady. She was like, we never had computers, like you just write it on a piece of paper. The tax is like whatever it was, 6.2% but for the people who are so used and dependent on these computers, you stop and everything. It's just like this anxiety. You don't know what to do. But if you just didn't have those computers to begin with, I mean, it would be it's convenient, but it's nice to know how to do things without the computers. Um, so I don't like to worry about terrible times ahead, but I also want to prepare myself in case of such an event. If we woke up one day and the grocery stores had shut down, or things got so expensive you couldn't afford them, or suddenly you aren't able to work unless you have something put into your body that you don't want. You never know when your life will be turned upside down, and it's best to know how to make things work without all of the conveniences. I was just reading about this lady who lived down south in Tennessee when the hurricane Helene hit, but she was already living off the grid. And she wrote a message that was like, "This, friends, is why we live an off-grid lifestyle. These major disasters are why we do without all the extras to live a simple life. While others are frantically worried about having power to keep medications refrigerated, food chilled, and breast milk frozen, we have a peace of mind. While others are worried about heating and cooling their homes, we're comfortable. While others worry about how they will cook their food or water their animals, we go on with our lives just as they were before the storm hit. We dealt with our storm damage, we took care of our family and animals, we weathered the storm. You can't help others through this disaster if you are worried about your family being taken care of." So if you live without and you live more simply, then these outside forces aren't going to affect you as much as they will for people who depend on all these conveniences. Um, so we rush the weeks to get to the weekends. We plan our vacations to escape from our everyday lives. Wouldn't it be better if we could just be satisfied with what we already have and find that our happiness is already within us? We don't need to look for an outside source to save us, to provide for us. There is this need for instant gratification. We can get all that we want instantly over the internet, or just go to the store and buy it. We have to remember that things that are best for us take time, trust the process, and learn to be patient. Um, we always make kombucha, and lately I haven't been making it. So, every once in a while we'll get it from the store. But the other day, my kids are like, I could really go for a kombucha right now. And I was like, all right, it'll be ready in 14 days. And, they were kind of disappointed, but, it's like, you just, it'll be 14 days. That's how long it takes to make it. And I was like, and at the end, it's going to taste delicious. Oh, let me get my battery. Can you still see me? There we go. The end, it's going to taste delicious, and it's better than the store bought. And sometimes it's not better than the store bought. Like the last batch that I had when they had been waiting the 14 days had no carbonation at all, but we had kombucha juice instead. And the fact of the matter is, disappointment is part of life. And, just as good as winning and having everything be wonderful, disappointing is just as important. Disappointment is just as important. So I just get a sip of water. So a big event's coming up soon that not everybody, a lot of people are worried about. I am not. The election next week. People are freaking out. My neighbors are losing their minds, and I don't understand why. And it's so divided, and everyone is saying their person needs to get elected, and so this country's because they want the country to change the way they want it. And to me, it's like one person really has all the power over our happiness and what we do with our lives. What control do they have over your life? With the grocery prices going up, gas prices going up, the cost of living going up. If you're worried about losing your Medicare or the cost of prescription drugs, but you're not taking any drugs or going to see a doctor, then you're not worried about those things. Or if the prices of groceries go up, but you don't have to go to the grocery store, then it's less of a threat. If they threaten to change school policy, but you don't attend school, then it's not really affecting you. If they threaten to tax you into oblivion, but you live well under your means, then they no longer control you. A simple, self-sustaining lifestyle transcends the importance of any US election. Most people make their choices based off fear of losing your house, your food source, your medicine, or your link to your community. But when you live a self-sustaining lifestyle, the fear of having the rug pulled out from under you by a perceived governing force disappears. Without that concern for policy, you begin to care about you begin to care about actual values more. If you're not concerned with a candidate providing for you, then your scope of a political race will change. You must remember that any elected position is considered public service, and if a provider offers you a service you do not wish to rely on, then you don't need anything from them. And don't forget that there's millions of us and only a few of them. So when I think of the idea of being self-sufficient, I think not only about being able to do things for myself, but also understanding that some of us can't do it all. I think it's important to find others in your community that can help where you lack. I like the idea of not too long ago, I noticed a plant in my neighbor's yard. I mean, they live down the street and I hadn't talked to them much, but I was like, there's a black walnut tree in their yard and I need black walnuts. So I knocked on their door and I was like, can I collect the black walnuts in your yard? And they were more than happy to. And then they also gave me some quince, which I had never even heard of. I'm like, quince, I've never heard of that. They're like, well, try it. So just going to your neighbors and talking to your neighbors. And I mean, after they gave me the quince, I ended up making them some quince jam and I brought that to them. So talking to people in your community and realizing that you guys can feed off each other and help each other and barter and trade, it's so much more important than being like going to the store and giving away your money. There's just something more about just helping each other, especially the people that are close by. So I took their black walnuts and their quince and I made them some jam, and I'm sure now we have a relationship and we can trade some more things. So where to begin? How to live a more sustainable life, a simple life that is both fulfilling and benefits you and the earth. It gets overwhelming when you think about every single thing you do throughout the day and how to change and build new habits. Minimizing, I would think, would be the first thing. Just reduce your possessions and the consumption, even if it's just getting rid of one thing a day or a week. Stop buying things you don't need. Enjoy what you already have and make use of what you already have. If you stop buying more, you will appreciate and use what you already have. I struggle with this one because my husband, he will come home with the most random things. As I'm getting rid of things, he is bringing things into the house. So that's one of the ones we struggle with, but someday. Downsize your wardrobe. I think I have like 3 of the same pair of pants and 2 of the same dresses that I wear every single day. People must think I probably don't change my clothes, but honestly, I used to care about my wardrobe. I used to like, I couldn't wear the same thing, but it's so much easier now, and it's just so much more simple when I have the outfit already picked out. It's clean. I have 3 of the same thing. To me, it's just so much easier. Just put it on and I'm out the door in 2 seconds. Um, Start a garden, whether it's just a couple plants or 100. I live on an acre and I haven't really even utilized the whole place because it's all a hill, so it's a little bit more difficult to get my gardens going, but on 1 acre, you can supply yourself with all the food that you need for a year. Learn how to preserve your own food. Even if you can't grow something, you can go to the farmer's market and purchase local and start canning or dehydrating, and storing your food. Start saving your seeds. You'll have an endless supply if you do this. Never ending. You don't have to go to the store for your seeds, and everything you have is, where it came from. Sew your own clothing instead of buying something new. Make something or learn how to repair what you already have. Make your own self-care products or cleaning products. Minimalize the amount of time you spend in front of a screen, even if it's about how to make soap or because it's just going to keep leading you to the next thing. I feel like I am overwhelmed with more tips and I end up, like learning how to raise goats when I just went on to look up soap. I would rather I'd say just get a book instead. It's simpler and you don't get the advertisements don't constantly pop up. Practice gratitude. So just be thankful for everything that you have, everything that's given to you. And set small goals or big goals. Like give up something that no longer really serves you or something that you really enjoy that you don't need. Like I gave up coffee for 6 months. I really had no reason to give up coffee, but I was like, I really enjoy it. So I'm going to suffer without it for a little while. I drink coffee again, but just the things that you don't need. Um, so make something from scratch instead of going to the store and buying ketchup or granola. You can make all these things at home. Um, and start replacing things one at a time, with the condiments you have, or just, making bread instead of buying bread at the store. You can make it simple. Um, no amount of convenience is more important than your health. And it also teaches you to be patient because some things take time. Connect with nature daily and for extended periods of time. Make sure you slow down, especially the tasks you want to rush through, the tasks you dread or you don't want to do. Find peace in the whole process. Compost, it will limit the waste of food and provide your gardens with great fertilizer. I used to have a compost, but now I just huck all my food out to my chickens and, they're happy with it and it reduces feed costs for them. Um, Build a habit of working with your hands. Get into the habit of working with your hands. It takes time to build up a tolerance for it. If I don't spend the whole winter shoveling, like my husband does it instead, when spring comes around, I'm in the garden hoeing and digging, and my shoulders and neck are sore. But if I continue to work, I remain strong in those areas. Collect rainwater. Even if you just toss a freaking bucket out into the yard, you can water your garden with whatever you collect, or you can set up a whole system and you never have to worry about it. I have a well, so that's one thing that always worries me because I lived when I grew up, we used to run out of water all the time in the summer and we'd have to go to the bathroom outside or we'd have to go take a shower at like the college down the road. So water was one of those things that I'm still worried about because we have a well. So collecting rainwater is key, especially because I have 3 gardens and the animals. So all that rainwater that I collect goes to the gardens and the animals, which is super helpful. Um, let's see. Do it the hard way. That sounds kind of weird, but I don't mean make your life harder, but instead of using a leaf blower, use a rake. It may seem like it's more work, but you can hear the birds. It's easier to be present when you're bored out of your mind sometimes. Learn to enjoy the process. When I used to do meat birds, my husband wanted to get a chicken plucker. And It's literally you just throw the chicken after you've done whatever you need to do, throw it into the bucket and it tosses it around and it like gets all the feathers off. And I mean, you can get a chicken done in like 30 seconds. But I didn't like the whole idea, even though it was quicker. It would take me probably 10 minutes to pluck a whole chicken. But just the thought of tossing a chicken into the plucker, and I feel like it kind of took that respect away for the animal from the animal. And I feel like I owed it to the bird to pull the feathers and feel his body, as you know, because it was his life. So I feel like it was more respectful, and it was being more present. I mean, it's a life, and even though it's food for you, it's still so important to be thankful. And so that's another thing with practicing your gratitude, being thankful. And I feel like you can really understand it more when it's in your hands and you're going slow with it. So I can sleep at night, so that's what makes me feel better. Connect with people in your community, work out trades, build friendships. Both are good for your survival and also for your health. Um, so your definition of simple living can involve a mixture of these, all of these, or you probably have other ideas that work for you. It may be helpful to try different approaches out to see how they make you feel so that you can adopt new habits and lifestyle that you feel will best boost your well being. I love gardening and raising animals and preserving food, but I have not had the desire to make my own self care products. Luckily, I have friends that make soaps and all sorts of things, and I reach out to them when I need to. And that's where the barter system comes in handy. I give them a rabbit, they give me some soap. You don't have to be good at everything, but if you can find you're good at one thing, um, then you can find others that can build off your strength, and you can have a good relationship and feed off of each other. And so, besides gardening and growing your own food, those who are not vegan or vegetarian and wish to have your own meat source could raise animals for an endless supply of meat as well. Those who have limited space available, like myself, choosing which livestock was the most sustainable was kind of a tough decision. I live on 1 acre, and the thought of having a cow, which is what I really wanted, but I was like, I don't think that's manageable, or any large livestock, it seems overwhelming and not feasible. When I was young, I grew up on acres of flat land, and I had chickens, ducks, turkeys, pigs, rabbits, and my parents had had cows before I was born. I have chickens, and I went the meat bird route for many years. I would get about 50 birds a year. It would fill the freezer. It was like 250 pounds of meat. But every year I had to buy the meat birds because the Cornish cross that I got, you can't breed. So even if I wanted to save a couple for the next year, instead of having to go and purchase them, they wouldn't make it because they get so big so fast. So then I thought about maybe getting like a different breed. Um, but it wasn't the best option for me. Um, so when I was younger, my father had rabbits, and I loved them the most because they were so clean and soft and friendly. And so I read up more about rabbits because I was thinking, well, maybe it's something I could do. And I found that you could get an average of 180 pounds of meat a year just from having one male and 2 females. And I could space it out throughout the whole year instead of having just the 250 pounds all at once and like filling my freezers until I didn't have any room. I could space it out. They reproduce quickly, they're clean, and they're super easy to raise. So you can literally raise them in an apartment building if you needed. So that's why I'm going to talk about how to raise rabbits for meat and why I think it's an excellent choice for people who don't own much land or those just starting out and are looking for a good sustainable meat source. So let's talk about rabbits. Rabbits are considered white meat. They're super high in protein and low fat content, and they're high in many vitamins and minerals. Back in the old days, I don't know if you've ever heard, they would talk about there was like this protein poisoning because people would just eat rabbits and there isn't a lot of fat on them. So they were just getting the protein and they die from having protein poisoning. But luckily with rabbits that aren't wild, you can get them to get extra fat on them, and you get a variety of foods. So nobody's dying from protein poisoning, even if you eat a ton of rabbits. When I started out, I purchased one male, two females. That's really all you need to produce 180 pounds of meat. Breeding is simple. Um, I'm not going to go into detail about that, but if anybody's really interested in how to breed the rabbits, I will go into more detail if you want to get a hold of me. um, Gestation average is about 32 days. So when you breed them, 32 days. And when the kits are born, you can handle them as much as you want. So that's always the favorite part for us, is because we kind of plan, we know when they're coming. So every day we'll go down around the time, and you get to see a whole bunch of little babies, and you can hold them, and the kids love them, and we count them and you check them, and then you put them back, and the mom's okay with that. So my kids interact with them daily, and love on the farm is overflowing with the new life. The kids nurse from their mom about 6 weeks, and then mom can be bred again around then. So after the born 6 weeks, they can start again if you wish. I usually space it out a little more. I usually wean the kits around this time and separate them once they're fully weaned. And if there's enough space with mom, then I just leave them until it's time to butcher. And butchering takes place at about 12 weeks or 5 pounds, whatever comes first. I found that butchering at 14 to 16 weeks, the hides were thicker and they were better for if you were keeping the fur, so tanning. So it was really nice fur. I would keep it for longer. The fur can be used for mittens, hats, coats, blankets, and anything else, because it's just so soft and warm. So by having rabbits, you get an endless supply of meat, snuggly little babies to love, hides for making things. The whole process takes about 13 weeks, and litters can be anywhere from like 1 to 12 kits. I had a rabbit this past winter that had 14 babies, and they all survived. Um, you can use scraps as dog food, organs for your own consumption, brains for tanning your hides, bones, which you can grind up and make bone meal for your garden or for your own use. You can use the blood for blood meal. If they have fat, you can save it for tallow and used it for cooking. My son uses the feet and makes lucky rabbit foot keychains. Every part can be used and nothing needs to be wasted. For vegetarians or for anyone who has never raised animals and or who were never raised in this kind of environment, I since I was little, so I feel like I see it a little differently. It may seem foreign, awful, or you believe you're not capable of doing it. For those who truly have the desire to continue eating meat, and are interested in doing it themselves, I promise you it's worth it. It's not always easy, but it's life. I'm an animal lover. I firmly believe that we aren't doing kids any favors by sugarcoating the realities of life and death, including what it takes to eat meat for dinner. If we bought some kind of meat from that wasn't local, I would always tell my kids, explain that this wasn't a cow that came from a nice farm. So we labeled all the stuff that we would get from the store, like this is sad cow, or this is sad pig. So before the kids ate it, which they didn't seem to really care, they're like, "Can I have some sad cow or sad pig?" But to me, it was important for them to know where it came from, where your food comes from. Um, and I'm not gonna lie, like I cry when I kill the rabbits. I do. I pray and I thank them for their life, and I try to give them the best life possible while they're alive. And while I feed my children, I thank God for the food. I would rather be a part of the process than go to the grocery store, not knowing um, where the meat came that I'm consuming and if it was raised humanely, which I'm sure it wasn't. So being part of the process to me is so important, even if I absolutely dread those days. um, so rabbits can live in cages, hutches, on the ground, or in a fenced-in area. They can live in individual cages, or they can do it in a colony style, which is more like how wild rabbits are. You literally just let the rabbits all run free together, and they breed whenever they want. So for me, I like to just keep the females together because I feel like it would just be too much. It'd be just nonstop babies, and it could get overwhelming. I just don't want to be overrun with rabbits. Um, the best thing about having rabbits is that if you are growing a garden, the garden and the rabbit benefit each other. Rabbits are able to consume garden scraps that humans rarely consider as a food source, such as weeds that grow amongst the plants, the leaves that are discarded after pruning, and the stalks from corn that remain after harvest. In return, rabbits produce manure that is an amazing fertilizer for plants. It's considered cold manure, so you can put it directly on your plants. It won't burn them like other types of manure. Um, it's a great relationship that benefits both the garden and your rabbit. Um, Inflation doesn't just affect the grocery store shelves, though, but it also affects local feeds. So increased feed prices made raising animals for meat expensive, and supply food chain issues made commercial feed unreliable. I always get this type of rabbit feed, and when they're out of it, rabbits have this really sensitive stomach. So when you change their food right away, it can upset their stomach. So when when they were out of the pellets that I needed, it was kind of a panic. So I had this idea. I'm like, well, what if I could raise them like wild rabbits? Like there's got to be a way. So I started doing my research, and I found this book. It's called it's probably going to be backwards, but Feeding Meat Rabbits for Free, a homesteader's guide on what to grow, forage, to feed your rabbits so that you can completely get off grain. So this book was a lifesaver. It allowed me to get started raising my rabbits completely free, besides, the initial costs of cages or whatever I needed, which I basically just look for free stuff online. So this was one of the main reasons I chose to raise the rabbits. So I've managed to completely go off feed during summer months. I haven't managed to make it through a winter yet. I haven't really tried very hard. But it's also because I have been using the convenience of the feed. During the winter time, I'm like, I don't know. I have to store all this food. I don't know. I have not there yet. I'm working on other things, but I'll get there. I'd like to completely just feed them off everything right here. So if you can identify what food sources are around you, you can attempt to combine your nutritional needs with the nutritional needs of your rabbits. This combination will create a system that everyone benefits from. The human tends to the rabbit then feeds the human, and it's a cycle that flows together and benefits everyone without any additional cost. Before you decide you want to get rabbits or any other kind of livestock, be sure to do your research first. Super important. And if anybody wants to know more, I have plenty of books that you can read up on. So for with the kids at Muddy Boots, when during the summertime, the kids help forage all of the food for the rabbits every single day. It usually takes about a half hour, and in the process, we get to identify local plants and trees on our property and get a variety of foods into the rabbits. And it feels good because it's all natural. It came right from the ground. They're not getting any poisons. The kids help gather goldenrod, blackberry, and raspberry leaves, avens, burdock cleavers, chicory, chickweed, coltsfoot, curly dock, and the list goes on. It's all readily available where we are, and it's all free. And trees are food too, so they eat ash, branches and all, sycamore, apple trees, cottonwood, birch, hickory, American beech. I mean, I go outside and I'm like, they can pretty much eat anything. There's a couple trees that depends on if it's spring or fall when you want to feed it to them. But like I said, when you do your research, and if somebody's interested, I can help you out. I mean, there's so much food out there, and having the kids learning while we gather the food is even more amazing. I feel better knowing that my rabbits are eating everything a wild rabbit would eat, and I'm not sure if the meat actually tastes better or if it's just me. The book Raising Meat Rabbits for Free lists so many wild plants and what nutrients they provide for your rabbit, and it also lists the medicinal plants and how they help certain ailments in your rabbits. So I haven't given any of mine any medication whatsoever, and I've had some issues. Like one of my rabbits had like an eye infection from something. I don't know if it was a scratch. One had a cold, it seemed like. But there's plants and herbs that you give them just like you would yourselves, and they help with them. So if your rabbit has a cold, you can feed it basil, echinacea, red clover, rosemary, spearmint, thyme. For a cough, heart ease and sage. General respiratory issues, you can give them lemon balm, sage, thyme, and a whole list of more. So if you're really interested in that book, Feeding Meat Rabbits for Free, has all of it. So the main point of all of this is that what you feed will grow. If you feed big pharma, social media, negativity, then that's what will grow. And if you feed your soul, your homestead, and love your family and your neighbors, then that is what you grow. So strive to live on less. Strive to build a community that helps one another. Strive to find happiness in the ordinary and look deeper and find more meaning in what's right in front of you. There's an old saying that says, anything you do, do it to perfection, even if it's sweeping the floor. We are stretched in so many directions, we aren't even sure if we're sweeping the floor right. So focus on one thing at a time. Be careful with what you are being busy with. The other day I processed five-gallon buckets of black walnuts. I wore gloves this time, didn't the first time. And it was tedious and it was long, and I found myself starting to dislike the process and just trying to rush through it because it was really taking a long time. But I brought my attention back to what I was doing, the way my hands worked, the sound of the nuts falling in the bucket, the smell of the black walnuts as I broke open the hull. I allowed my mind to focus on the process and the outcome instead of the more enjoyable things I could be doing. It allowed me to be present, fulfilled, and content in the moment. There was no outside noises, nothing to do with the election, nothing to do with dividing of our country, nothing to do with the grocery prices. And in that moment, I was processing a nutrient-rich food for my family for the winter that me and my children harvested because they helped me with all of it. We jump out of the car and load up the buckets, and we from a few neighbors. And in this moment, in a moment like this, you are truly free. So strive, less is more, and stay local. That's all I got.
Thank you. That was amazing. That was amazing.